This is a Tweed's Garage public information film. The hard bit at the end of a lace is called an aglet. What's that, Jenkins? You want your shoe back? Very sporty. Hello, welcome to Tweed's Garage. In this video we're doing more work on the 1937 Scott. So yes, like this, should look like this, but it's in pieces all around the workshop. Well, not completely in pieces, but some major chunks of it are. For those that haven't seen previous videos, shame on you, but you can make amends. I'll put a link in the bottom for the playlist of the Scott stuff so you can catch up, get up to speed, as they say in this sort of world of management. Yeah, but just a brief overview. I sort of knocked the back of the gearbox out. Yes, this fell out, back of the bearing housing, causing much calamity and angst. But yeah, we turned up a new end, welded that on, all looks pretty good. Machined the inside of it. Yeah, that was a bit tense. Oh, there's some exciting stuff to go and watch, I'm telling you. Yeah, but what we had was a little leak, a tiny little leak. If you put oil in, wasn't a problem, but put sort of lighter fuel in, like thin sort of, you know, petroleum sort of spirit type of thing, it would sort of sweat through where the weld repair was in a certain spot. So it was getting through, you know, tiny little pores in the weld or in the casting, because it's yeah, the casting is sort of like a sort of whisper bar, if you know what they remember what they are. Do they still make them? I don't know. Anyway, rambling on. Yeah, so in this video we sort of find a solution for that leak, and I'll show you what I've done with that, and then we get on, if that worked, with possibly putting the gearbox back together. Okay, so here you go. We'll go down to the bench. It hops around a little bit because it was sort of quite involved. Stuff got put together, taken apart, put together again. Forgot where I was. But yeah, we get to a final result. So, join you at the end. So here we are, back working on the gearbox casing. If you didn't see the last disaster and repair, I'll put a little link down below for you to go and find it and watch that. And just to remind those that saw it previously, managed to sort of repair it, spoiler alert, managed to repair it. And but the trouble is, put light fuel in the bearing housing, and it sort of leaked through slowly around the back of the weld, back of the repair, and through the porosity of the casting and the weld. So didn't know what to do with that. Was just going to yeah, put some paint in or something like that, you know, and hope nobody noticed. But anyway, got talking to a guy, Paul I think his name is, I'll put the correct name up above, from Impregnation Solutions Limited. Yeah, bet they get some funny phone calls. Yeah, hang on Daisy, sort you out. Hello, is that Impregnation Solutions? Good, my bull ain't covering my cows. What can you do about it? Yeah, and they do this porosity sealant, and it can be done under vacuum, but this one doesn't require a vacuum. It will sort of, through capillary action, drag its way through. So they do three different types: thin, medium, and a thick one. And chatting to him, he said I'd need a thin one, so pay for a bottle of thin one. Did give me a little bit of discount because I was mentioning it on the video. Yes, we need to give this a go. So first thing we need to do, as it's not here, it's in the oven next door. The housing is warming up to about 80 degrees centigrade, and then we'll be ready to pour some of this in. You can spray it on, apply it by brush, but I think I'll just be dribbling it down into the housing and swirling it around, and then you just keep reapplying it over a sort of certain amount of time. Can't remember, instructions are here, I read through that. Yeah, dog got me homework as usual. Yeah, but to check it, what you need to do is make sure it's still working. is get a couple of pennies. I haven't got a couple of pennies, got a couple of penny washers, and just put a little bit on the back of the washer like that. A bit like super glue, pop them together like that, and then just leave them somewhere, and we'll come back to those and see if they set. Take about 10 minutes. Yep, washers are stuck together. Yeah, so this is the stuff. I'll go and get the gearbox and we'll apply this. Right, so the gearbox is up to temperature. We'll take it back to the workshop. Looks like it's cooled down just a little bit. Well, I've been fiddling around, so we'll just sort of warm it up again with the electric heat gun, bring it back up to temperature, and then proceed to dribble the porosity sealant in the areas that I need it, and see how this goes. There we go, we've given it time to cure, cleaned up the casings where any sort of dribbled through, and yeah, it's easy to clean when it sort of hasn't gone off. I think it's sort of a bit like super glue or Loctite. Once air is expelled, I think it sort of starts going off. It goes off in about half an hour, I think, is the cure time. Now, looking at the instructions, 20 degrees C cure time, typically 5 to 10 minutes. Higher the temperature, the faster the cure. But it says to leave the casting for 30 minutes for the sealant to cure before retesting. So there you go, that's all on there, and we'll test it later, make sure it's okay, and hopefully get to start reassembling the gearbox back together again. So the reassembly of the Scott gearbox starts from here. I would have brought you along with me, but I needed to get it done quick, and yeah, didn't need any distractions. So it's still gearbox is still warm. Put it in the little sausage roll oven for about 10-15 minutes, about 100 degrees, not super hot, and then put the bush that I needed to put in down there. See if I can focus down there. There you go, down there. Pop that in the freezer, and also, I think I can take this out now, turned up this bit of tubing, just it was just slightly oversized, just turned it down to I think it's 33.2, something like that, just under the size of the bush, but just with a tiny little shoulder on, just to help me line it up and push it down. And I'll put this, if you haven't seen previous videos, I put a thread on a, oh, better get that out, I've got bearing lock down there, hang on, bear with. Right, we're back. That was a close one. Yeah, still going off, but it started, yeah, started to go off around there. So yeah, this threaded bar went in there to act as a guide for this little cutout on the bush. There's a screw that goes in there that sort of locks it into place, stops it spinning round, so I needed that in place. So thought I'd have a bit of a fight, put the bush on here, chucked it all in the freezer, balled it up, slipped it down the side with that recess resting on the bar, and just sort of dropped it down, and it plopped straight in, so pushed it home, hence the bearing fit splurged all over the place, and gone in successfully. So yeah, and the ouch, it's still warm. The impregnation solutions liquid has poured around there multiple times, and I think that's done the job. I didn't get any come through on that side, but as I described earlier, yeah, through this hole there was some weird leakings coming on, but I think it's got so much bearing lock and rubbish down the bottom of it now, nothing's going to leak out of there once I pop that screw in with a bit of Loctite. So right, that's the first bit. Now we've got to get this bearing in, get the shafts in, and start building it back up again. Fun times. So with the bronze bushing, I then proceeded to push in the inner bearing for the intermediate shaft. Yeah, sort of went in okay. I was sort of worried that I might have made that with that sort of catastrophe we had with the cutter picking up and causing that god-awful chatter and leaving a rough face. It was still fine. So the bearing was pushed in a little way, and I tried pressing it in, but couldn't really see what I was doing, and it was going in at an angle. So we went old school in the end, supported the back of the gearbox and proceeded to tap the bearing gently with a drift all the way round. Just keep tapping it until the note changed on the bearing and on the box, and we knew that it sort of touched down at the back of the bearing housing. I just gave it a few more taps to make sure it was there, and then moved in to pop the screw in that locates the input shaft bush in the housing, just stops it sort of spinning round if it becomes loose. So just cleaned the hole up with a tap because got a bit of bearing fit in there, so cleaned that up as far as we could. Had to shorten the screw a little bit because where I'd done all the welding on it and that hole had opened up at the back, there was sort of a lump of weld at the bottom of the hole. So just sort of trimmed the screw back just to sort of about a thread or so, and then a bit of Loctite, screwed that home nice and tight, making sure that the head of it sunk just below the outer face of the bush, and that all went in really nicely. So with those all in nice and secure, I dropped in the intermediate shaft, made sure it was all the way home, and then slipped feeler gauges underneath it between its outer surface and the bearing, just to check that it cleared the input shaft bush and screw, so I knew it wasn't going to sort of bind on there. So that was all good. Okay, so more progress. We've put tiger seal on those bottom bolts just to stop any oil trickling down past the threads or around the sides. You know, just try and keep the annoying oil leaks down to a minimum. And popped in the input shaft, so it brings the drive into the gearbox. Pop that into the bush. That spins quite snugly, which was good. It was binding up a little bit, so we just took it out and popped a little bit of Brasso on my finger and run it around the bush, and then just run this round a few times by hand, just sort of backwards and forwards, just to sort of polish off any sort of rough high spots that were caused probably by the case shrinking down and shrinking the bush slightly. You know, it wasn't enough to require popping a reamer through there. So yeah, that turns over quite nicely with oil on it. Slows down a bit, obviously, the stiction of the oil on a close fitting surface. But yeah, so that's in there. I've just got to remember the process of dropping the gears and the selector forks back in. Yeah, how did I do that? Okay, I've got you there. Let's see if we can put this all back in. Things that, drop it on the floor. Selectors at the ready. These need to go in. That needs to go that way. Got my output shaft and associated gears and selector all on the shaft, like so. And also the transfer shaft as well with its first, second and third speed gears. So drop that down through there like so. The output shaft, feed that down and round and past there. I've done this last time. It's got to go there. I think it may have been upside down. Right, hang on. I'll wiggle round. Oh, it's stuck under there. A fiddle. I don't remember it being this difficult last time. Gotta go around there. Come on. Oh, I might have to turn it upside down so you can't see what I'm doing. Just getting that selector going up into this housing there. There should be plenty of room for that to go in. There we go, like that. Get that past there. So we've got to get second past third. Gradually wiggle it all down. Right, let's get that selector up out of the way. There we go. I think it's going in. Pop the selector in there a bit. There we go. But that's in. Anyway, selector's selecting. Gears are turning. I'll give this a gentle tap off camera, make sure it's seated home properly, and then we'll try and fit the top case on, and we were back where we were months ago. So gearbox back together after all that catastrophe, and there we're back to the problem we were sort of trying to sort out before the gearbox broke, and this was the cover not going on quite straight. And then also, yeah, because we've done a bit of machining and stuff, I don't know how accurate I was with boring the recess for this bearing, but I've just popped the cap on as close as I can get it, and yeah, you can see we're getting blue on the bottom of this bearing, and yeah, definitely blue on the bottom of this bush against the shaft here, which will lock it up. So if I pop that on like that. Okay, so I'll push this bearing, big bearing, into here as far as I can get it, and we've got a bit of clearance. I forgot to put the ball in there when I put it together, and I've Loctited it, and I don't want to take it apart again. Now, one of you suggested there may have been, you know, should have had some adjustment or a grub screw in the end of it. And I found something cut off when I looked really closely, so I've drilled a hole through, popped an easy out in, and look at that, here we go, easy out. There you go, Chris, using the screw extractor set again. Oh, obviously quality old English ones. There we go. All we need to do is find a replacement for that, take the spring out, put the ball in, put it all back together. So, continuing with the gearbox, as you can see, it's not as complete as it was a little while ago. I'd forgotten to put the ball bearing in with the spring on the selector arm here, and it was all done up and Loctited in, which was an issue. But then, as you saw, I discovered it did have a grub screw in it. Where is it? Little grubby screw. Yeah. 5/16 BSF grub screw. Got some on the way. Managed to drill it out, get it out with an easy out. So when we get the grub screws, it'll be adjustable, whereas it wasn't before. So that's one sort of fortuitous thing that has happened that's made a slight improvement. The other thing, and this was what I was fighting with even before the back of the gearbox fell out, is when you bolted this cover up. I don't know if you can see there. It fits here, but there's a gap here, about 0.6 of a millimetre here, across there. And I've been chasing my tail a bit, wondering whether it was the gearbox casing itself that was on the wonk, or whether it's this that's on the wonk. Really difficult to tell, but I needed to machine a bit of clearance on this bush, on this intermediate shaft, because when I drilled when I machined the bearing pocket here, it's not quite deep enough, a little smidge over, so it's pushed this intermediate shaft this way a bit, which interferes with the bearing on this selector shaft. The bearings in here, but luckily when I machined the bearing housing for that side, that's a little bit too deep, so I've got enough movement to move that way to give us, to stop that shaft, the other shaft rubbing, the gear rubbing on the back face of the bearing. So, you know, swings and roundabouts. Anyway, when I was machining this, I made the mandrel, as you can see, turned up a piece of aluminium, turned it down to size to a tight fit. And then push the cover on there, nice tight fit. A little bit of super glue, and just twisted it around a bit till the super glue went off, and that held it in place. That allowed me to turn the bearing surface down a bit on the bush where it sort of rests against the intermediate shaft to give us a bit of clearance. And when it was on there, I moved it around, moved the case around on a dial indicator. Well, first I just moved the lathe tool towards it just to sort of gauge it, and discovered that indeed it's this cover that's at fault. So yeah, this is about 0.6, you know, close to the dial indicator. If I zeroed it here, 0.6 here. So if I machine this cover back on the mandrel, you know, taking off material from this side until I just sort of clean up, you know, this edge here, that should be about 0.6 of a millimetre, and then that'll bolt nice and squarely onto the gearbox case. Again, you know, you rob Peter to pay Paul, taking a bit off that, then taking a bit off this, and then when I bolt it back up, I then lose, you know, the clearance I machined on the face of this bush. So what I'm going to do is, I made some gaskets up before. I got that one there, I think, yeah, and a thinner one, that one there. So that's a bit thin. I think with this gasket here, slightly thicker, I think that'll just give us enough clearance on our bushings and bearing fit, and yeah, hopefully it will bolt up and all revolve nice and freely. Okay, back to the lathe. So with the outer case faced off, true to the intermediate shaft bush in the case, proceeded to put it all together and tighten it up with the gasket. Went for the thicker gasket that I'd made out of the two, but found that it was okay until you'd sort of nipped it all the way up and it just tightened up a bit, and you know, it was clamping down, the bush was clamping down on the intermediate shaft and locking the gearbox up. So went upper size on the gasket paper. This sort of chunky stuff here, just under about 0.9 of a millimetre, I think. Yeah, and not very compressible. So yeah, quite good for using as a sort of spacer. I know, not brilliant engineering practice, but you know, you're not going to pop down Halfords and say, can I have a new gearbox casing for a 1937 Scott, please? Ain't going to happen, is it? So no. So that's what we've done. Made a slightly thicker gasket out of this paper. Usual way, you know, trace the outline, cut it all out, punch the holes out, popped it on. So we got, you know, thicker version of this. And tightened up all the bolts. And perfecto, as you can see. Take it over the back there. As you can see, all runs over really nicely. The nicest it sort of ran, you know, from taking the gearbox apart to where we are now. So knowing that was all okay, I went sort of assembled, put the kickstart on as well, and that all works really nicely. And then sort of went to assemble, put on the, this is the extender plate to mount the gear change mechanism on. You see what I mean? I'm not too keen on it. You've got plates on plates on plates. Anyway, this is the way it is. Let me zoom you out a bit so you can see. Yeah, see that goes on there like that. Now some are saying there is a sort of mullered hole you can see from the back of this plate. So whether there was a post on there with a rubber bush on to stop the kickstart flopping this way, I don't know. But anyway, that's got to go on there, and then there's a rose this link here, and there's a rose joint link that goes on to there, connect to there. I must go on the back actually. Oh, I don't know. It's all a bit Heath Robinson, to be honest with you. Anyway, that sounds like a me problem, not a you problem. But another problem I found, now I've put these on and this plate on, you now find, let me lift you up, that you saw earlier the kickstart was working lovely. You now see, even with that head of that bolt turned with the flats facing the kickstart, it now catches there. You know, and that's the way it's meant to go out, because you've got this scallop here, so it sort of misses the kickstart. So it's just, you know, and you can see it has been rubbing on there. I think one of these nuts is, or these shouldered nuts. What do you call these? Sleeve nuts, because they sort of go in quite a way. Yeah, that's got sort of wear mark on the outside, so that may have been over here somewhere. Who knows? Anyway, couple of things I'm not happy with. Now, I don't like this. With this plate on, there's no allowance. These sleeve nuts aren't extended. They're all the same length. They're all for a standard gearbox without this plate. So yeah, see, so you push it into there, look, can you see? Zoom in again. Beep, beep. So you pop it in there, and that's where it starts biting. So it's holding the gearbox cover on by what, sort of thread and a half. So I don't like that either. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this gearbox, whether it's, like I said, I'm wondering whether it was too 2 parts originally, you know, with that being that far out. Did I tell you that before, or was I just wondering that to myself? Might have been wondering that to myself. Always forget what I tell you. So, more work to be done. This sort of, yeah, this has got to be sorted out. I think really, if I'm going to keep it, I'm going to have to turn some longer ones of these up, because that's not acceptable like that. And then, yeah. See, without this plate, this kickstart, the back of the kickstart, doesn't hit the head of this sleeve nut. It's only now put this plate on that it's hitting. So yeah, don't know what to do about that. Anyway, another problem to be looked at. Want to get it all working nicely. Clutch release scrolls back on, and that's as good as can be expected. These have a habit of being very worn or broken, irreplaceable. There is a sort of fix for it. It's quite a sort of big thing that goes on the back here. So if we can retain this, it moves up squarely on the scroll. I think it'll be all right once we get the thrust bearing on there and get it adjusted up properly. It wasn't adjusted properly when I took it apart. So yeah, I think it'll be okay. But we might do the reverse clutch cable. So clutch cable normally comes this way over the engine, sort of between the primary drive chain, or just over the top of it and underneath the magneto chain. There's a lot of chains whirring around, and there's little holes in the crankcases to put wire loops on. I think there's the cross tube has a little tag on it with a hole in that you can sort of put a wire round, you know, like an early cable tie to keep the clutch cable out of the way of the chains. But a neater solution is to bring it in this way from the back, so you loop it round where it ain't going to get caught, sort of around the top of the frame, under the seat, come in this way, and it pulls this way. So you just change the cable so that it, you know, it has like a mushroom that will drop down through here and rest on here, and then you'll make up something that the clutch cable outer sheath can rest on here, so that when you pull the clutch cable, the outer sleeve of the cable is the one doing the sort of being pulled that way as the cable slack gets taken up by the clutch lever. Yeah, so I think we're going to do that as well. But yeah, so more work to be done, but yeah, couldn't ask for a better, you know, everything turns over nicely. We're not quite, where are we? Yeah, so it's not quite on the, yeah, so it all moves quite nicely. There we go, got it in first gear, so I can turn the output shaft, the input shaft whizzes round quite nicely. And there's second gear. And that's third gear. So nearly 1 to 1. Yeah, so progress. Hopefully, I mean, it's not going to be perfectly oil tight, but hopefully more oil tight than it would have been with the back of that bearing housing missing. That's for certain. And all turning over nicely. So getting ready to sort of pop it back in the frame. But yeah, I need to sort this out and this, check all this mechanism out. And yeah, getting that back on there. Yeah, sorting these out. But yeah, onwards and upwards. So there you go, bit of a result. Gearbox back together, as you saw earlier on. Done a little bit more. Got the old clutch spring on there, and that seems to sort of work quite nicely. Yeah, taken the gear change selector off again because I've been looking at that. Yeah, we'll find a solution for that. Not quite sure what to do yet, but yeah, because the Scots were quite expensive and there weren't a huge amount made, it does sort of vary. Let me show you on the old booklet I've got here. I've been going through pictures. Right, getting close and personal. So this is, I think this is a later model. It's got the same forks that mine has, but it's a distributor, which I'm not an aficionado in Scots. I think they weren't fitted till after the war, sort of 1940s. Mine's got these forks, but they could be bought as an upgrade kit along with the gear change mechanism for the earlier Scots. So I think originally mine had forks. Mine would have looked like this with the girder forks. Personally, I prefer them. I think they sort of make it look quite nice. They tend to make the front end look a bit gawky. But anyway, that's another problem. That's just cosmetic. But then again, here you see it's sort of slightly different. The kick starts further back. It doesn't come up to that bolt area that it was causing a problem. There's another one there. Yeah, that one. Just trying to think. 1, 2, 3. I think it's sort of the bolt is the sleeve nut is just behind the kickstart there, but you can't see it there. Yeah, and then the later ones, the actual gearbox casting. This one, this gearbox casting had all this integrated. You know, this back plate, that was all integrated into the casting. So, you know, this assembly here bolted onto the top of the gearbox cover as it came up here like that. So that wasn't an issue anymore. But anyway, as I said before, that's a me problem, not a you problem. So yeah, I'll tinker around with that and come back to you, let you know the result on that. So there you go. Sort of, yeah, a bit more positive. Yeah, positive gear change. So there you go. Some sort of positive news on the Scott, gone back together. Yeah, and the more I twiddle this round, the more I like it. Yeah, it's sort of, yeah, really pleased with that. So positive stuff, onwards and upwards. So what we're going to be doing next? Yeah, assembling the forks, sorting them out. Got the new fork tubes. They're good. Trying to stop them from rusting till I can get around to paint them. And yeah, so that'll be coming along soon. So I hope you liked the video. If you do, give us a little like, and as I say before, subscribe because it helps the channel out, helps me out, buys Jenkins a few sherbet fountains every now and again. Well, just 1 or 2. Yeah, and we'll see you next time. All right, what's that, Jenkins? Doesn't match your outfit. Get your other ones. Oh, I don't know. See you later. Hello and welcome to Tweed's Garage, where in this video we're doing more work. Sort glasses out first. Hello, well, ringing. Hello? Car. Do ya? I think so. Yeah, and